Thank you guys for coming. The first session after lunch is always a strange one because people are still rolling back from lunch. So you always have to have this 3 minutes of kind of filler, right? Where you don't cover your exact rationale because people are going to walk in. So I'm going to start. I have a couple of thank yous, but I'm going to give first of all one. I'm in my room reviewing my presentation, and there's a slide or two in it that this study wasn't out when I last did this talk, which is in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. So it's bang up to date and it's new. And I'm like, wow, my laptop's kind of running a little low on power. Let me plug it in. And my power cord isn't working. And I'm like, I got to run to the Apple store and get a power cord, right? So, and I hate cardio, first of all. So that's already, we're off to a bad start, right? So I'm heading down the stairs. I see Kyle from the FMS walking towards me, right? So Kyle, what kind of laptop do you have? He goes, a MacBook. I goes, is it one of these? Because I bring out my 1975 laptop. It's just how I roll, right? And he goes, no, it's one actually that's up to date. So I'm like, all right. Because I was just going to steal his power cord. Anyway, through a whole bunch of getting like 7 or 8 people in, I am now using Kyle's laptop because otherwise this is going to be a very short presentation. But luckily I know my material cold and you don't have to worry about that. But this is the kicker because Kyle's from England. And for the last decade, I have made England jokes in my presentation. And I can't. For the next hour, it was going to be 4 hours, it's going to be 2 hours because they're going to be back at my hands-on. There's going to be England jokes. But shout out to Kyle. Thank you for saving your guys' presentation. All right. May 20th, 1994. I'm in college and I get a phone call from my dad. And it's actually the day I'm going to do, there's exams that day. And I pick up my phone and my dad says, hey, are you all right? You sitting down? And I was like, yeah, what's going on? And he goes, your mom just passed away. My mom is my age. It's kind of trippy now that I get older. My mom was overweight. She had a heart attack and died that morning, right? Here's the killer part though, right? I was in college doing sports science and I just finished a paper on body composition and fat loss strategies. And I got an A on the paper, and my mother had been following this program for about a month and had lost no weight. It hadn't worked in reality, right? The program that got an A in the academic world failed dramatically in real life. And that kind of changed the direction of my thinking. If you guys are watching the Olympics, world records are dropping. Sport has never been better. You could throw some of these athletes down a flight of stairs and they'll get leaner and build muscle, right? But the general population is worse than it's ever been, right? That's the obesity rates in the United States as of 2011, right? So green to red, the more yellow and orange it gets, the worse it is, right? 2012, slightly worse, more yellow. 2013, more orange. And a red one, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. Colorado's still kicking ass. 22. Now we have a new color, even worse, right? I think that's the last one that I have. We are failing. We're failing the general pop. We're busy arguing which the best diet is vegan or carnivore, should you do circuit training or aerobics, and the scorecard's in. We've failed the people that really need our help. But that stops today. We're going to fix it all, I promise you, right? So thank you guys for coming. Thank you again to Kyle for saving this presentation. So make sure you buy him a beer at the social. Also, beers are free. Don't have to worry. Just go give him one, right? Thank you, first of all, to my team, these rock stars over here in the green shirts. One of them, I opened the gym before he was alive. That makes me feel extremely old. It irritates me every day when I see him, like thinking how old I am. I am easily the worst trainer at my own facility, and I'm very proud to say that. But don't get that twisted. I'm pretty good, right? But my guys are rock stars. Thank you guys for everything that you do, and you run in the show. Special thanks to Perform Better. As Chris touched on, I first met him, I think it was 04 I met him, 04, 05. And my first ever lecture with them was, I think, early 06 in Atlanta. My second one was here, and it was just in the hands-on room as my very first lecture before you were alive, right? Reminder, I'm old. That's some of the longest relationships I've had. Other than people that I know in Scotland and my wife, I don't know anybody that long as I've known these guys. We've been to 2 weddings, like Rob and Aaron, who you haven't met. They're not here, they just had a baby. I was at their wedding. Ali and Charlie, they met at Perform Better. Ali Gilbert and Charlie Wengroff. I was in their wedding party. So these are some of my friends. So what people forget is Perform Better is an equipment company. They just happen to do seminars better than anybody on the planet, right? They're so good at it, right? That we get confused and think they're a seminar company, but they're an equipment company. So there's a business lesson. If you're going to expand your service offerings, make sure you're world class when you add something new. And then lastly, thank you to you guys for coming out. Our profession does not have the most stellar of reputations, does it? If you watch a comedy show and there's a personal trainer on it, it's usually either like a kind of dumb steroid bodybuilder, go, I pick things up, I put them down, right? Or it's kind of like a ditzy aerobics instructor. That's always the joke of the show, right? And if you see them on Law and Order or CSI, I guess what? Probably the killer, right? We don't have the best reputation, right? Right? When you told your mom you were going to be a personal trainer, she was like, well, that's great. I can relax now. We're going to be rich. Probably not. She took a second job. I told my mom I was going to be a professional taekwondo instructor, right? She was ecstatic and took 2 more jobs, right? So, but you guys are making that difference. You guys are taking their profession to another level. So do me a favor, just turn to the person next to you and give them a high five. And just look, and look them in the eye. Just look them in the eye for a second and just say this. You made a wise decision by coming here today. And choosing to sit next to a rock star like me. All right. Well done, guys. You're sitting next to a rock star. And there's another lesson. Like I may do that to be humorous, but there's so much. I was in this room listening in 2005 alongside some other speakers that have now come through, and we're presenting together. The next generation is in this room right now, right? And they could be sitting right next to you. So make friends. Don't just ask the speakers questions. Ask people who are here questions. All right. I'm going to watch this, by the way. See how I walked around that? That's advanced presenting skills. You never do this. If you see anybody doing this, you know they don't know what they're doing. You always walk around, right? It's a skill. Right? So a lot of the stuff that we're going to get to the content soon. I told you 1:45. I've got to do filler for a little bit, right? Right, now the room's full. There's a lot of lies about fat loss that we're going to expose in the next hour together. And I'm going to share them with you. Number one is that traditional exercise doesn't do much of anything to lean out your clients, right? Here's a study that said despite decades of research into fat metabolism, we really don't understand. Anybody who explains to you how this works in any kind of detail is lying because we don't know. And the studies show that it does increase fat oxidation, but only during the session. Nothing much happens for the other 23 hours, right? It doesn't really seem to do much. Note the phrase traditional exercise, right? Here's a study came out in 2011. They split these 439 obese women into 4 groups: a diet-only group, an exercise-only group, diet plus exercise, and a control group that did nothing, right? Now here's the results. The diet group lost 8.5% of their body fat. That's pretty good. The exercise group, 2.4, far less effective. Combined, it doesn't even really do much more. But look, people that did nothing lost a little bit, right? So you have to compare. They did nothing and still kind of got a little bit leaner, right, just by chance. So we have to factor that in. The exercise, as it's traditionally been prescribed, doesn't work whatsoever. I'm going to fix that. So here's the theory. What is fat loss? Fat loss is when your body cannibalizes itself for fuel where there's a shortage of energy. That sounds horrific, right? But it eats itself alive to stay alive, right? And what we want that to happen is we want it to come from fat stores and not muscle mass stores, right? We don't want to lose bone. We don't want to lose organs. I don't know if you could lose organs. I'm sure there's a way, right? But what is it? It starts when there's a food shortage. There is no, now when we argue about what's the best diet out there, I think some of these new these drugs like Ozempics and Mounjaros and things like that are showing us that a caloric deficit is king. There has to be an energy deficit in the model, right? Or it doesn't work, with one exception that I will share today. Right? So here's how it works. I'm going to get geeky on the science. That is the fat. If you can pinch it, that's what it is, right? It is a fat cell that comes out of the fat cell. That triglyceride, which is a word for fat, breaks down into 3 free fatty acids. That's where the glycerol backbone and 3 free fatty acids. That is the tri. That comes out of the muscle. So you've broken it down based on epinephrine or adrenaline. That starts to come out into the bloodstream. This is the science. I know it's boring, but it's going to be cool in a minute. Then it takes the albumin taxi, right? Serum albumin, which is a protein it binds to, and it moves it into the blood. And then it gets into the muscle and moves into, it goes on the carnitine shuttle bus to get into this. What is that? Mitochondria. Anybody here go to high school outside the United States? Where did you go? What is another name for the mitochondria? What do they call it? What's the nickname for it? Powerhouse of the cell. Did you hear that in Canada? Yeah. All right, I heard that in Scotland. This is the only thing the entire world agrees upon. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And that is the end of my understanding of the mitochondria, right? You put that up, everyone goes, mitochondria. What is it? Powerhouse of the cell. Oh, we're on the same page. So what happens is you get on that carnitine shuttle bus, and that's like going through passport control, right? You get there, and you're like, I'm coming to arrive in England. Beautiful country, Kyle. Beautiful country, England, right? That's harsh. And then they say, hold on. Do you have a passport? And then you show your passport, and they let you in. That's how carnitine it uses to work into the mitochondria. But then the fat is broken down, gives ATP for energy. So you'll start seeing recently L-carnitine supplementations coming back. Injectable L-carnitine is this thing. But this idea that we can elevate this somehow by having more L-carnitine, to a degree. But that's like walking up to passport control with 12 passports. Now you look suspicious, right? So more is not always better. But the mechanism we have to be clear on, that's how it works. Shortage of energy, the breakdown, right, through the adrenaline, which is high intensity, moves into the bloodstream, moves to the muscle where it's burned off, into the mitochondria, and it's used for energy, and then we expel the rest, actually, the waste products through breath. We have to be hydrated for that to happen, because there are some waste products as we go through the liver. And if the waste products go to the kidney and we can't filter them out, the body shuts the whole thing down. So number one, you have to make sure your clients are hydrated, right? All right, so what is metabolism? We all hear this. I have a slow metabolism, right? He had a fast metabolism when I was younger. Well, let's talk about what that is, right? Because that's important when we start designing our programs. Metabolism is how many calories your body burns each day, and it's a 4-component model. BMR is your basal metabolic rate, right? And all these slides, by the way, are in. If you scan the QR code on the schedule, everybody's slides are in there, but there are some new ones in mine. I'll tell you where they are so you get them. That's your body's calories it burns at rest, sleeping, breathing, not even moving, right? That's the biggest part. The next one is called NEAT, and this has been the biggest change in my understanding of fat loss over the last couple of years. NEAT stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis, right? Non-exercise activity thermogenesis. The next part is the thermic effect of feeding. This is my ADD, right, or my OCD. Feeding is called TEF. Exercise is called EAT. They should fix that. It's far more logical that the thermic effect of feeding would be called EAT. But no, the top part is exercise activity thermogenesis. So there's the reality, right? Watch again. I don't cross the front of that thing. I come over here, right? This is the smallest piece. This is far bigger. This is bigger than exercise, right? And this one is the biggest, right? But let's break that down. So your basal metabolic rate, it will increase if you add muscle, because muscle is metabolically active. It burns calories, right? So I'm not talking about training, the exercise portion of burning calories. This is when you add it to the body now burns more calories at rest. If you add fat, it actually goes up a little bit, because fat is a little bit of metabolically active tissue. If you lose fat, it goes down a little bit, because you've lost something that's metabolically active. So if someone continues to diet and get leaner, that metabolism starts to go down. That basal metabolism starts to go down, particularly if we don't pay attention to the muscle part. Right? So we're starting to think, right, when we look at the science of how this all works, we start to shape how we have to approach it. Right? This is not modifiable in the short term. I would love to tell you that my workout this afternoon is going to add slabs of muscle to your body and make you so much more metabolic that it'll go up. This is a months-long process of getting leaner and adding muscle, right? So that's the first part. That's just the biggest portion, and we can't change it that much that quickly. The second part is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I just want you to write this phrase down, energy constraint hypothesis. Charlie says you can't use big words. Charlie is little. I'm tall. I use big words. Energy constraint hypothesis. I'm going to break that down later. But this is everything you do, fidgeting, moving. Like some of you are sitting here and you're just not moving at all. Other people are like this, right, wiggling around. All of that counts. Your body's burning all the time, right? Walking, your number of steps, tracking steps, right? This is highly modifiable, and we should be monitoring it. This is the biggest change in my fat loss programs with our clients in the last couple of years, is paying attention to this, right? The thermic effect of food is slightly modifiable. When you eat something, in order to digest it, your body burns calories, right? So if you eat 300 calories, not all of the 300 gets absorbed. Some of it gets burned up in digestion, etc., right? So fat, very low, 0 to 5% of the, if you eat 100 calories of fat, you absorb nearly all of it. Nearly all of it. You can burn it off later through NEAT or exercise. You can burn it off there, but a lot of it gets absorbed. Carbohydrates, 5 to 10%. Higher end for vegetables, fibrous carbs. Lower end for more starch, simple sugars, things like that, right? Kind of makes sense. Your mom was right. Eat your vegetables, right? Protein is the biggest one. So if we take the standard American diet, SAD, and we try to manipulate you like that one, right? That was a good one, huh? You can come next time. Right? You didn't laugh, so you're not coming to the next one. Right? If we start moving, maybe reduce the fat content in the diet, maybe reduce the simple carbs, and we don't even eat less yet, and we add more protein, we're going to create a deficit. And you're going to look like a magician. You're going to tell your clients to add protein. Just switch out some of those carbs and fats for protein. You don't have to eat less yet, and they'll start dropping fat. And they will come in and tell you this. We have a joke at Results Fitness that we have an in-body machine to measure body fat, and clients will come in and go on it, and then you don't see them. And other clients will come in and go on it and like, check it out. And it's usually when it's good. I only ever see good ones, right? They hide the other one, and then they suggest that the test isn't valid if it goes up, right? They get upset. The stupid machine doesn't work. Right? Because clearly, right. But you can see we can just modify the intake a little bit. You could see potentially, if we reduce fat and even added vegetables, we could get a bump in calorie burn. If we reduced fat and the simple carbs and replaced it with protein, we get another bump, right? And then exercise is highly modifiable, but it's just a small piece, right? It's still a small piece, but we can tweak that, and I'm going to explain how we do it, because that's kind of most of our roles is going to fall in that part. You're going to be responsible for all of this, but this is the stuff that you can do on the daily, right? So let's start getting into practical strategies of how we're going to do this. There are 3 anchors for fat loss. Number 1 is we have got to create an energy deficit. There has to be a shortage of food coming in, however we do it, whether it's just we restrict carbohydrates, we restrict calories, we do intermittent fasting and restrict the time that we can eat. All of these things work on the same mechanism, right? Second one is a positive nitrogen balance, because I don't want to lose that muscle mass, right? That is my big factor in keeping that metabolism up. When I lose that muscle mass, I'm just kind of kicking myself, right? I can't get past that from we're losing metabolically active tissue. And then tied to that, we have to create an anabolic signal. Even if we don't build muscle, we have to send the signal to the body that you've got to keep this. This is vital, right? So Ian is here. Ian has got 2 watches on. He doesn't. Just play with me. One of his watches is worth $400, and one is worth $900. And I put a gun to his head and I go, give me your watch. He's going to give me the $400 dollar one, because the 900 is more valuable. That's a gram of fat and a gram of muscle. The fat is more valuable to the body in a starvation situation. It does not want to give that up. It will always give up the muscle until we send these signals that overrides it, because the threat to Ian is so high. The threat to him to lose muscle is so high because of his lifestyle that his body will keep the muscle and dump the fat. That's going to be your cornerstone for your programming. Right? So number 1, we create an energy deficit. I got this from... This study come out, 2 studies here, right? When you control for calories and protein, and you take care of those 2 things, let's say we do, just for argument, 2,000 calories a day and 200 grams of protein. I'm making these numbers up. And you eat whatever you want for the other 1,200 calories. There is no difference in fat loss results. The fat and the carbs don't matter whatsoever. They seem to just balance out. You can't eat more, but they seem to just balance each other out, and it doesn't really make a difference, right? Which is great for scientists and terrible coaching advice, right? We can't go like that. We have to give strong recommendations. My recommendation is, what kind of foods do you like? And if someone comes by and they like more kind of fattier foods, we'll have a higher fat content. If they like lower fat, like more like rice, pastas, things like that, then we'll do more of that. Because it really doesn't matter. And it also gives them a little bit of autonomy, because I say, here's how much we're going to eat, and we're going to hit the protein, and you can spend your budget however you want on everything else. You can, if you want bread, you can have it. If you think low carb is better, go ahead. Like, I don't care. The big picture, the cake is the total calories, and the protein, the icing on the cake is everything else, right? So there's no difference when we look at low carb versus low fat, low calorie, right? So this has been a thing for a while, cardio to drive the deficit. As long as we're in a deficit, maybe we don't need to eat less. We could just kind of cardio it off, right? So let's have a look at let's go to the science. 3-month study, 45 minutes of aerobic exercise at 78% max heart rate, 5 days a week for 12 weeks, had no effect over dieting alone. So let's picture this. We've got 2 groups of people. One is on a diet, other one is on the same diet, and this group adds 45 minutes a day, Monday through Friday, and they don't cheat on the weekends. That's not what happened in this study, right? There was no difference in fat loss, right? Anybody surprised at that? Just me? I was surprised at that. I thought it might work, right? Because that's quite a lot. Here's your first clue. Something's going on. Because scientists, though, they felt the same way. They're like, that's a bit strange, and that's quite high intensity, right? Scientists are like, that's a bit strange. Here's what we'll do. We'll go longer. We'll go a 6-month study. So they did 2 groups, and they did 50 minutes. 45 minutes for 3 months didn't work. 50 minutes, 6 months. Maybe it'll work now. Nope, didn't work. I'm surprised at that too. But I know what you're thinking. You're like, Alan, these are short-term studies. What about a long-term study? All right, let me pull that one up then, because I have that. 1 year of a 6-hour, so remember, 45 minutes, 5 days didn't work. 50 minutes, 5 days didn't work. 60 minutes, 6 days. It worked this time. It worked out about 0.3 pounds a month of fat loss, which is considered statistically significant and considered real world terrible. Imagine you trained a client 52 weeks, 6 hours a week, and they were paying you, and at the end of the year, you're like, congratulations, ladies, you're down 3 pounds. They will send all their friends straight over to you, right? No, they won't. So what's going on, right? Like, it burns calories, right? But when we compare it to the same dietary intake, things happening outside of the workout period. All right, so a 12-month study. Something's happening because it burns calories and they're eating the same amount of food. So this isn't having an effect. Now, will their cardio improve? Will they be fitter? Absolutely. You're not going to not get in shape by doing this type of work. It's not translating to a body comp issue, so something's happening. This is a meta-analysis of 25 years of weight loss, analyzing over 400 studies. This is just 3 isolated studies I'm sharing. This is 400 studies that concluded that aerobic exercise does not provide any significant advantage over dieting alone. And we're all like here, right? You're kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure I'll buy it. 400 studies showed it didn't work. If you think it works, you've got to come with 401 showing that it works. That's how science works. So the verdict is kind of not a good tool. Here's another one, just to beat a dead horse. 1,847 participants over 14 studies lost about 3.7 pounds of fat in a year. Our results show that isolated aerobic exercise is not an effective weight loss strategy. Right? But it's the thing that we use the most in fitness, right? We pick up the cardio, we start people doing metabolic training classes, right? But if you believe in, if you have to go to court to defend your program and somebody like me come in with all these studies, you're done. Right? The science is in. It was a poor choice, borderline negligent choice if you're talking about just fat loss. I mean, it's not going to be negligent. Don't worry, we're going to get to the punchline. Just trying to kill time for changes to bad research. Let's take a closer look. Here's some quote. They did a study on identical twins and they put them in a metabolic ward. This is the response to exercise with constant energy intake in identical twins. They were looking at a genetic response to exercise. This is some of the best studies you can find. When they're looking at something else and find something related to fat loss or fitness, unrelated to the original study, that's usually something strong. So, identical twins in a metabolic ward. What a metabolic ward means is everything is controlled. Their nutrition is controlled and we can measure their metabolism all the time, right? I'd be guessing at anybody's metabolism. They're in a ward where every breath is measured, every meal is monitored, right? Here's what they did. 3 months, the diet was controlled. They had a 1,000 calorie deficit per day. That is big. They had 2 hours of cardio per day. That is a 93,000 calorie deficit. That sucks. I hate cardio anyway, 2 hours a day, right? But if we think about that, 93,000 calories, we're there for 3 months. We'll lose 26.5 pounds of fat. Now, me and Ian, we're going to hate it. But dude, we'll be ripped. We're going to come out ripped. They're going to pay for our meals. All we got to do is go train. We'll watch Netflix and we'll come out ripped. But that's not what happened. They lost 11 pounds. Less than a pound a week. Me and Ian are going to finish the study and we are getting pizza and we are drinking beers and we are pissed off, right? It should have worked, right? So what happens? Here's another study. This is with older women where they put them on a program. Look how I'm missing that again. I'm going to keep pointing out to you. Now, somebody this afternoon is going to cut across that and you're going to look at that guy. Right? They put them on 2 training sessions, 1, 2, or 3 training sessions of weight training and 1, 2, or 3 sessions of cardio training, right? The group that did 1 + 1 increased their caloric burn every day. The group 2 + 2, they burned another 200 calories a day. So they did all the training and then another 1,400 calories of burning through their non-exercise activity. Remember that phrase I told you about? They burned another 200. When we took that to 3, it went down 150. So they added 2 exercise sessions a week, and as a result of that, burned 900 a week less than usual. So one group went up 1,400, one group went down. When we look at going up 200 or down 150, that is a 350 calorie difference in general movement. That's a pound every 10 days, a pound of body fat every 10 days. This is where we come into the energy constraint hypothesis. Your metabolism is not a calculator. It is adaptive. When we add that amount of exercise or those 5 days a week cardio, 6 days a week cardio for hours over the course of a year, your body dampens down everything else, right? It turns the notch down on the fidgeting, right? I was talking to my uncles in the audience. I did a 10K one morning and I came back and I realized like 3 hours later, I'd done like another 100 steps. Yeah, I'd moved a lot, but my body compensated. This is the energy constraint theory. Most of your clients aren't burning enough, but there's a number where we hit it that they will start to drift off on the rest of their activities. This is where we unlock the fat loss, because we just cut the calories and we add exercise and add exercise and add exercise, and the body pushes back. The body stops them moving. They fall asleep earlier. They fidget less, they move less. And you've added 4 hours of exercise and they've compensated by doing 4 hours of less activity. So, putting the jigsaw pieces together, we're going to use nutrition as our driver first of all. Right? I got this from Ali. This is in your notes. Instead of traditional calorie equations, go with whatever your maintenance is, and then we cut calories. You've heard that, right? You cut 500 from that or whatever. I think a better way of doing this is we set a target body weight for our clients, and we have them eat like that, right? So I'm like, you are going to be a 150-pound athlete, and we're going to start today eating like a 150-pound athlete. That is our target body weight. We take the target body weight times 9 to 11. That gives us a range, because we're not going to eat the same thing every day. And then we're going to multiply that by an activity factor. The activity factor in our world is hours of training per week. So you can see here we go up 1.4, right? So 1,800, with 150 pounds in this example is our target body weight. We'd eat somewhere between those two, right? And you can see here, adding an hour of training a week would only move that up 10%. Right? In this example, it would only move it up about 200 calories, right? Which is less than you would burn, but it's in that zone where there's no metabolic toggling, where we dampen it down, right? That's your sweet spot. So we start there. And then we go to number 2, positive nitrogen balance. We want to keep the protein high. Here's a study from 2020. It shows that the functional importance of energy balance regulation with losses of fat-free mass causes increased weight regain, right? So Rachel at her presentation tomorrow, I tried to get the slide off her, but she wouldn't give it to me. She showed females that have repeatedly dieted and regained the weight. Every single time they dieted, they lost lean mass, right? And it's until they get that lean mass back, we don't restore that metabolism. One of the things we want to think about is there could be a theory that whenever anybody comes off a diet, if they've lost lean mass, the body is going to overeat to get the lean mass back. And that has this fat rebound where they end up coming back fatter than they started, right? Everybody knows it, the yo-yo diet we call it, right? People come off the diet plan, right? So our goal is we've got to handle this through protein intake, right? This means adequate protein, and a good starting point is a gram per pound of target body weight, right? This is where every client complains, that's too much protein. If you gave them a whole bunch of carbs, they'd be like, okay. When you give them a lot of protein, they're like, that's too much. How am I supposed to eat this? I'm like, here's how we do it, right? I got some new studies here that I want to share. They came out they all came out of Florida actually, but Joey Antonio was the lead researcher on these. He actually spoke in Orlando when we were out there doing one of these events. We were in Orlando a couple of months ago. And he was one of the other presenters there. And he was talking about this too. And he's the guy who actually did the studies, but I presented before him and kind of stole the punchlines because I got to go first. Right? He put a group, a high protein and a normal protein group, and the high protein group had 200 grams extra protein a day. That is a lot. And that is 800 calories. There were no other changes. The high protein group didn't gain any body fat. I'm going to explain how I think this happened in a minute. But you're basically adding 800 calories to your client's nutrition, and there was not a negative effect of overeating when it came from protein. That caloric deficit thing starts to get a little murky now, right? This is only one study though, right? I got another one. Normal protein and high protein. The high protein group consumed more calories than the control group. The normal protein group gained 3 pounds of weight during this study and lost muscle, 3 pounds of weight, but some of that was muscle. They lost 0.6 pounds of fat. So it means they gained some muscle weight. The high protein group only lost 0.2 pounds of weight, but they lost 3.74 pounds of fat. More calories consumed, but 5 times greater fat loss. This is what's cool. You're going to look like a genius when you start implementing this with your clients, because you're going to give them more food to eat. And the worst thing that can happen is nothing changes. Right? The worst thing is you get to eat more chicken, you get to eat more food, and nothing happens. But that might happen. You might get in 8 weeks just about 4 pounds of fat from eating more. This is a freaking infomercial, right? Like, you don't believe it. These are real scientific studies. Here's one on figure competitors. The high protein group again consumed significantly more calories, 400 more. The normal protein group, it was actually fairly high. Right? It wasn't like a standard American super low protein. The normal protein group gained 1.3 pounds of muscle but didn't lose any fat. The high protein group gained 4.6 pounds of muscle and lost 2.4 pounds of fat. So the scale went up 2.2 pounds with them, but they're leaning out and eating more. So when I tell you in the beginning, you have to have a caloric deficit, it doesn't have to be from protein. Protein is free. Eat as much as you want. Right? The science is very clear right now. So after that, Ali was with me. Her and I have been trying to eat high protein when we were out there, since we were out there. And I've reported that I've got up to 300 grams a day. Joey showed people up to 1,200 grams a day. Think about that. That's 4,800 calories just from protein, and the guy leaned out. Right? So there's something happening. Now, I asked Joey, why not? Why are you eating more food? Why does the protein not happen? Why does it not cause fat gain? And I'm going to tell you, we don't know. Because your first thought is, well, that's a thermic effect of food, right? Protein burns more calories. Well, it can't burn more than you ate, right? It does something to the metabolism that ramps something up, right? You ever been at a Brazilian steakhouse? And you get the meat sweats, right? That is your metabolism going up. We were out in, I think it might have been Florida last year, and we went there with the Perform Better crew, and then Vin, who you probably met at check-in, he has a theory: you don't eat any of the vegetables, any of the potatoes, nothing. We're getting our money's worth. We're eating meat, right? So I'm like, let's go, Vin. You can't keep up with Vin, right? I was sitting next to Sue Falsone, who's on the tour with us, and she's like a physical therapist. I not only had the meat sweats, I had meat back pain and meat scoliosis, I think, at the end of it, right? It's hard to do that, right? But it's magical. So anybody who tells you they understand the mechanism, my theory is there's perhaps a higher thermic effect of feeding. That's a piece of it. But it may drive that non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It may elevate metabolism. One of the only side effects in the study was one of the participants, and she's a female, late 20s, said that she couldn't sleep at night because she's so hot. Her metabolism burning hot. And perhaps it just summons the magic fat loss fairies to come, right? This is an offering of protein to the fat loss gods. But let's run with it, right? Let's go back and everybody start testing it out. Like, start increasing your own protein and have your clients do it. If your client's currently eating 75 grams of protein, take them straight to 300. Don't mess around. No, that's not true. Ease into it. Ease into it. Like, because when I've got some they're like, I'm making 100 grams. They're 220-pound ladies, and like, I'm up to 100. I'm like, all right, good. I want to get them to 300. I want to get it over body weight, right? But this works. Next part, create an anabolic signal. We're going to tell the body that it has to keep the muscle. Aerobic training doesn't send that signal. Weight training sends the signal, right? If you don't build an ounce of muscle, but we send that signal, right, that we're going to try to keep the muscle, the body maintains it, and that's our key exercise component. So here's a few studies. 2008. All groups, 3 groups, diet plus aerobics, diet plus resistance training. They all lost the same amount of weight. The study's a little icky in getting the details. Only the resistance training group maintained their lean body mass, that's their muscle, and their resting energy expenditure. So if the other 2 groups are losing muscle, their resting energy expenditure goes down, right? That's our big contributor. So if we extend this study out longer, the resistance training group's metabolism doesn't drop, and they continue to get leaner, right? So we extend it out a little further, they continue to get leaner. Sorry, I'll let you take that picture. You good? All right. 1999, diet plus aerobics plus weight. The diet group lost 14.6 pounds of fat in 12 weeks. The aerobic group lost 1 more pound. Me and Ian are pissed. We keep doing aerobics. None of it's working. It doesn't get into our thick heads that it doesn't work. We just keep trying to change the number. Waited 30 minutes, went to 50 minutes over the 12 weeks. The weight training group lost 21 pounds of fat. Now, I'm preaching to the choir because you know this, but some of your programming doesn't reflect it. It looks a little too metabolic, right? And there's a place for some of that for other fitness activities. But if you had to get someone lean in a hurry, we up the protein, we up the weights. That's how we're going to do it, right? Another one from 1999, 800 calorie liquid diet. Now we're pissed. That's like four Guinnesses. It's like a snack, right? So we did 4 hours of aerobics a week because we're not accepting it, right? The aerobic group lost 27 pounds of fat and 10 pounds of muscle. That's a 37-pound weight loss. In my world, that is 17 pounds weight loss, right? Because you've lost metabolic tissue. This is going to backfire on you later. The resistance training group lost 32 pounds of fat and no muscle, right? So it wins. The aerobic group reduced metabolism by 210. The resistance training group increased metabolism. We get a 275 swing, right? We're looking at about 12 days for a pound of fat loss. Look at this, VO2 max, that's your aerobic fitness, increased equally in both groups. You don't even have to do aerobics to get good at aerobics. 800 calories, that'd be miserable, right? So do we adjust the training for fat loss? Well, every bodybuilder on the planet tells me this, right? The training used in a bulking phase is the same as used in a cutting phase or a fat loss phase, right? Every bodybuilder ever. 1, none of my clients just came off a bulking phase, so this is out the window. And number 2, it's also not correct, shockingly enough. So I used to write for this website called, it used to be called Testosterone. It's called T-Nation, and I don't know if you've guessed, I don't take myself too seriously, right? So I would make fun of bodybuilders because that's just ridiculous, right? They end up dieting down to really low body fats, and then they get really, really tan, and then they put oil all over their body so they're shiny, and then they spasm, right? They spasm, and the judges are like, that guy's the best at spasming, and he gets the prize, right? So I would comment on things like that, and I would get like hate email. I don't get as much hate emails as Ali gets. Ali talks about Turkey and people hate her, right? I'd be like, man, bodybuilding's kind of goofy, right? And then these guys would hit me hate mail. I'm like, I'll kick your ass, you little guy. He goes, well, no, you won't, because 1, bang, bang, you're knocked out because you can barely stand, right? So I'm functional. And 2, I'm only joking, right? It's just a joke, right? But this is from Dr. Mike Israel, who's a bodybuilder, powerlifter. He has a PhD, a very educated guy. When you're in a deficit, when you're cutting calories and trying to get lean, you're already short of anabolic signals. You've got to do something more to maintain your muscle. So that program, when you were eating a lot that built muscle, is not enough. You have to do more, right, to keep it the same. Right, that's how we change it. So the volume to even maintain it increases. So your volume of training for your clients, if they're trying to get bigger, can be smaller than somebody who's trying to lean out. The volume is a key. But also the amount that they can recover from. Recovery resources are lower. So while you have to do more to maintain it, there's a cap on the other end. So even if we keep the programs exactly the same, volume goes up, but frequency has to be adjusted. And I'll tell you why, because that energy constraint theory kicks in. The body starts shutting down to conserve its energy, right? And you're just, kind of beating yourself up doing it, right? So that's the first thing. We're going to make that change. What else can we change? Look, what does that say at the top there? European Journal of Sports Science, 2024, June. Bang! That's why I had to get this presentation to you, because this study didn't exist when I did this in Orlando or in Chicago. So when we do a fat loss competition between my attendees, I expect you guys to win because of this slide with the extra secrets that I'm about to reveal. You guys are not, I'll skip by this if I don't get So you're going to get feedback forms at the end of this, right? And you're going to write in it, Alwyn Cosgrove over-delivered. O-V-E-R-D-E livered, right? 5 days a week training for 8 weeks. 15 sets per day, 8 to 12 reps at 70 to 80% rep max. So kind of getting the concept, right? Only difference was a full body versus body part split. Right? This is not in your notes, so you might want to take a picture of this. Right? Wait. Now, the full body group lost significantly more fat than the split group. All right. Do we know why? No. Anybody who tells you they know why is, I like how Charlie said it. Some of this is my opinion, and I may change my mind on it. They've done the exact same thing in the week. The only change is the sequence. Just write that phrase down. The sequence is the only change. They're doing the exact same amount of bis, tris, chest, shoulders, quads, hams over the week. We just do 15 sets per day, so they do the whole body, the whole body, the whole body. That's not a great idea, P.S. It's not the best study. There was no change in muscle mass. There was no change in strength, but that full body group lost more fat. Now, not a lot, but we didn't do anything different. We just changed the sequence. We changed the sequence and we improved fat loss. Once again, you've given your clients more protein. You give them food. We don't deprive it. We give them food and they lean out. And we just change the sequence of their workouts, right, to this style, and they lost more fat. I'm going to tell you my theory on this, and I will carefully walk on this side of the projector again. I think when you hit legs once a week, you got to hit it hard, because you're not going to hit it again for 7 days. I think with any body part, if you're going to hit it once a week, you're going to hit it hard. And I think with that volume, you're going to increase the amount of soreness you have. Delayed onset muscle soreness goes up with volume, kind of linearly. And I think these people just moved less on that split routine as a result. It's the only mechanism I can think of that makes sense, because nothing else changed. Now, granted, maybe the full body group did a couple more warm-up sets. Like if you just train lower body, a couple of warm-up sets, you're into it. If you do it every body part of the day, you maybe have to do a couple extra warm-up sets, but the numbers don't match. It doesn't explain it, right? So the mechanism that I think happened is similarly to the study where they took them from 2 + 2 to 3 + 3, is that volume is too much and there was a downregulation of movement. And with this group, I think the soreness created the downregulation of movement. You guys ever done a lower body workout that you're so sore you can't get down the stairs in the morning? Look around the room. Think about that workout you've done, right? Where you've done squats and lunges and your legs are sore, right? Look around the room at you weirdos smiling about it, right? A normal person doesn't like that feeling. You guys are like, yeah, crushed it. Hashtag beast mode, can't walk, right? But that day you're going to burn less calories. I'll answer all questions at the end, I promise. That study is showing a little more fat loss from doing the same thing. And I think it's not from the program, it's from the rest of the 23 hours. There's a little bit more movement happening as a result of that. We didn't have a control group here, so I can't confirm that, but that's my theory. Right? Another thing, controlled reps versus explosive reps. Explosive reps burn 13% more calories during training and 7% more in the post-exercise period. Same exercise, you just perform differently. So we've got two things now, sequence and execution. We change those. Sequence and execution, we see increased fat loss. Right? More protein, change the sequence, change the execution. Right? Another one where they called it traditional weight training to superset weight training. So superset in this study was you do a set of squats, short rest, set of push-ups, short rest, repeat. Traditional training is set of squats, rest, set of squats, rest, set of squats, rest. There was no difference in the results for strength or muscle mass, but the superset group burned more calories. Now, they didn't actually measure the fat loss in this, but I don't think it's a big stretch to say the group that burned the most calories in training, it's just by changing that sequence, should result in more fat loss if it's not too much, if we don't get that energy constraint theory. Right? This one was a circuit versus straight sets. No difference in strength, power, Only the circuit group lost significant levels of body fat. Again, sequence. You change the sequence, we change the results. Change the sequence, change the execution, you change the results. Right. Another one, I like to show a lot of studies because now it's no longer my opinion versus yours. I've been doing this a long time, and I'll tell you things that I see in the gym, and I'll speculate on ideas and mechanisms, but this is coming from science, right? They did a resistance interval training where the traditional group did 4 sets at 8 to 12 reps to failure, heavy work, did a total of 32 sets. The interval training group were doing what we call a rest-pause style. They do a set of 6 reps heavy, short rest, continue the set, right? So instead of 8 to 12 to failure, it's 6 to failure, so a little more intensity, short rest, and a few more reps. They did that 2 times, a double. It would be like a drop set where you drop the weight, only they didn't drop the weight. They maintained the weight and just cut the rest period. So I did that with deadlifts. I remember that day. I don't want to do that again. That was hard. But that mechanism of the density, now we've got sequence, execution, and density. We've changed the density. That group, the traditional group, did 62 minutes of work, 17,000 pounds lifted, and a caloric burn of 5% the next day. The interval training group did only 32 minutes, lifted less weight total, and experienced a 24% increase in caloric burn, 452 calories. That's big. That program is brutal. You're not going to want to do it. So just be aware that we have that as a mechanism. I would introduce this for 1 to 2 exercises. 1 to 2 exercises, you could put that in with clients. Sequence, execution, and this one is density. Right? So caveats and critiques. The internet's a fantastic place. I've done these studies before, and the usual comment is, well, none of these studies showed a big amount of difference between traditional weight training in terms of calories or fat loss and this type of style. And I agree with that. But if I went to work every morning and there was a $10 bill lying on the floor, I'm going to pick it up. And you're going to look at that and go, that's not a lot of money. I won't bother about that. No, you would bother about that. And that's how I see this. There is no downside to using this style of training and modifying it for your clients, right? See, our traditional idea for training has always been like our fat loss work is eat less, exercise more, right? Yeah, it's true, but it's just about as useful as, you want to be a millionaire? Don't spend all your money. Save that shit. Welcome to my finance class, right? So we have to have some mechanisms that we can use. And I think anything where I can do the same type of work and just change sequence, execution, and density and have these clients get better results, I think I'm going to take it all the time, right? So here's a summary of the exercise part. Full body weight training. Evidence is clear. Explosive lifts. Right? Explosive is as fast as possible with control. Doesn't have to be sloppy. Doesn't have to be jumps. Doesn't even have to look fast if you're just trying to move it fast. Use paired or circuit formats. So use rest, pause, or cluster sets. Select non-competing exercises. So we want to, while the legs are resting, we'll work upper body, etc. Right? We're trying to do that to keep that density. And we can take judicious use of these mechanical advantage extended sets, right? Where we extend the length of time for the program based on that, right? So, and then I round it out with cardio. I think cardio is very beneficial. If you're, we did me and my wife have a 5K challenge every year on 4th of July. I won. There you go. That's all. That's the end of my talk. No. We add it, I think you add it for a fat loss client on top of when you've got that nutrition in place, you've got that weight training. And I usually, I look at this. This is my spell check. This is the steps someone's taken. So 15,000 steps, about 1,500 to a mile, 1,500 to 2,000, depending on the person. So 15,000 steps, the person's moving about 10 miles a day walking. If this is a fat loss client, do you really think 20 minutes in the treadmill is going to move the needle? No. Here's your get out of cardio free card. You give me 15,000 steps, you don't have to do the treadmill. Unless you're training for a race or you're training for cardio, right? So I'll start. This is for fat loss. You get me this number of activity. If we're just using cardio to burn calories, it doesn't matter if it's steps or the bike. We're just burning calories, right? There's the mechanism, right? So I will round it out with interval training. I don't have time to really go into the interval training models, but interval training is just easy to program. Work for this long, rest for this long, do 2, 3, 4. And I can change that. I can program it quite easy. It can expand. I prefer using heart rate, and I prefer for our clients to do non-traditional barrel ropes, sled pushes, things like that. I think are a little better than traditional cardio. But if you add cardio and those steps go down, so you're going to have your clients monitor their steps. If those steps go down, you didn't make an impact into their total caloric burn. That's your spell check. When that goes down, you're screwing it up. That's that group that went from 2 + 2 to 3 + 3, and they moved even less. They moved so much less, they negated all the calories they burned in training. Right? So watch the step count. Right? So other things to monitor. This is the energy constraint type person. I just said, as you reduce the food and you increase the exercise, we've got this little unit where like they're eating less and they're moving more, and the rest of the day they just sleep the whole day. And now they're in a surplus and they've eaten more. I got this from, we were at the Olympic Training Center. We're working with we're doing a certification for US obstacle course racing. And some of the Olympians were there, and these guys will train. They'll usually have 2 practices a day and a conditioning session. And you watch them between sessions, like going to lunch, like, they're so tired, they don't move at all. Right? They look like sloths. These are some of the best athletes on the planet. But outside of training, they don't move because the body dials everything else down. The body's doing that on purpose, right? We monitor that with our clients. You've got a client who has an hour commute in the car to work, an 8-hour desk job, and an hour commute back, and trains with you. Cardio is going to be magical because you're going to burn a whole bunch more calories. But you've got a guy who's a construction worker who walks 40 minutes to work, walks 40 minutes home, takes the dog out for an hour walk and comes in. You put him 20 minutes on the treadmill, nothing's going to happen, and he's not going to refer his friends, and you're going to have a reputation as being a terrible trainer. Luckily, you're not going to have that because you got me. Look, this guy started training. Everything went down. All the additional exercise we added went down. Right? They moved less as a result. They did a program that got them sore, and the rest of their life was miserable because of you. Not you. The guys that are not at the seminars. You guys are all smart. But we're monitoring that all the time. Stress. I got this from Josh Henkin sent me that. It's kind of a cool thing when I talk about meeting each other. Me and Josh met at one of these seminars. Josh, the king of the sandbag, right? And one of my coaches was doing a Superman exercise the other day. And I was like, it's not a good choice. The compression forces on the spine for that are really high, about 6,000 newtons. And the loading on the muscle is no higher than a bird dog, which is very safe on the spine, right? But I couldn't find the study, and I texted Josh, and in 2 minutes he sent it to me. That person in your life might be next to you in this room, right? You're going to have to network with people. But he sent me this, right? It was a self-reported study on a daily inventory of stressful events. And you just report to me how stressful was yesterday, right? How was your day? And then we measured it, and this was like a crossover study a little bit, right? So greater numbers of stressors, people who had a more stressful day, were associated with lower resting energy expenditure after a meal and lower fat oxidation. The stress changed their physiology. Now we're aware of this, right? We kind of know, but this is a real measure. That person that was stressed burned 435 kilojoules less. That's 11 pounds of fat a year, right? So you've got to start looking at your client's stress levels. You know something that's extremely stressful? Hard exercise, right? We need to be making sure these clients are thinking about maybe some lower intensity work. This is where cardio starts to come back from me. Not as a driver, as something to reduce stress. Epsom salt baths, saunas, things like that, where we can bring the stress level down a little bit, we will see enhanced fat loss, right? You get the client that's smiling and happy and not stressed loses fat effortlessly. The client that's stressed or gritting their teeth all the time is smashing through these crazy metabolic circuits. They tend to have a harder time with it because the body's fighting them. Sleep. This also isn't in your notes. Orlando and Chicago don't know about this one either, right? You're welcome. 2-period, 2-condition crossover study. So that means both groups did both things. Right? This is kind of this is a well-designed study. So normally a study compares group 1 versus group 2. This compared group 1 versus group 2 and then swapped them over. So group 2 did the group 1 stuff and group 1 did the group 2 stuff. So we see what's actually happening. They did 14 days of caloric restriction and either had 8.5 hours sleep or 5.5 hours sleep. And the sleep curtailment decreased the fat loss by 55% and increased the loss of muscle by 60%. Big percentages, not huge numbers. It was only 2 weeks. Now, if you were to think about this, you'd be like, Ian is lazy as hell, and he doesn't get up until 8 o'clock in the morning. Me, because I'm overachiever, I get up at 5 in the morning. I am 3.5 hours up and at them more than he is. Who is burning more calories per day? Not me. The sleep translates to him having more energy all day. He moves more all day. I move less because I'm tired. Now, you're going to make so much money next year, guys. Hey, guys, eat more protein. Change your circuit. Make sure you get some good sleep. Ta-da, client gets lean. By the way, chill. You can relax, right? Go watch a movie, right? And they're going to get leaner than the people doing the crazy XFIT classes, right? This is the energy constraint hypothesis again. This low sleep group, I bet, was taking less steps if we measured it because they're so tired the rest of the day, right? All right, summary. Caloric deficit, protein's a freebie. I haven't seen an upper limit where proteins, in my head, there has to be at some point this extra protein translates to body fat, but the science has never been able to show it. You're at 1,200 plus grams of protein in some of the studies. Joey Antonio, who's on Instagram, is SUP-HD. It's stand-up paddleboarding, SUP-PhD. He's a PhD. It's like SUP-HD, so he has some of the studies. Keep your protein intake high. You've got to do resistance training, monitor your NEAT, and round it out with cardio work. All of this stuff, apart from the new studies, which is bang out cutting edge, are in this book here. They have it for sale at the Perform Better booth. If you would like to pick up a copy, I'll be happy to sign it for you. Let me just leave you with this. You could have been anywhere you wanted today. This last hour and 10 minutes, 11, 12 minutes we've spent together, you could have been anywhere in the world. And I don't mean the other 3 amazing speakers that we have at Perform Better, right? You could have been anywhere, and you chose to spend it with me because I have a cool accent, I think. I don't take that for granted. I appreciate all of you, and it has been an honor. Take what I'm teaching, right? I always hate this thing where we're like, oh, you got that from Alwyn Cosgrove. You got that from Mike Boyle. This is my gift. Everything I've taught you is yours. You take it and you run with it. You kick some ass. Deal? All right, thank you, guys. I'll see you at the hands-on later on. Bye.